Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I could ask you to, those of you still entering, find a seat. Those of you seated, we could get your attention, turn your cell phones off for a little while. Welcome to Wooten's College Admissions Night. We are pleased that you took the time to, out of your busy days and schedules, to come up here for about an hour and a half to be engaged in what I personally think, although I'm not objective, is probably one of the more informative panel sessions that you will see, especially as you begin what is likely in the next 8 months, one of the more confusing, exhilarating, frustrating, disappointing, and ultimately, hopefully, exciting adventures of you and your, what I would assume for most of you to be your current juniors' life. There's an awful lot involved in college admissions and acceptances as we just get into what will quickly be the second semester of junior year for most of you, or the sixth semester. We're going to have, hopefully you were able to grab an agenda on your way in. I am going to be very, very brief, which is difficult for me, but I'll do it. Just to welcome you, this evening we are momentarily going to hear from Mrs. Linda Hitchcock, our college career coordinator, about why we're here and the people on the panel. And then the college reps themselves who are just finishing dinner in the Career Center will be in here momentarily. Will be up on stage to answer questions on the panel that will be moderated by, I'm stepping down my role as moderator. Hold down the applause, please. And it will, the panel will be moderated by Becky Supiano, who is a staff reporter for the Chronicle of Higher Education. And I don't know if you had a chance to see it. This is the Chronicle, and this is the edition that was focused on Wooten and the wonderfully written and insightful article called Is Admissions Tougher on Asians? And given the fact that the Wooten demographic is 33% Asian, it is an irrelevant topic here, given the fact that this is Wooten and the pressures that exist here and the stress involved in academic discipline day to day and the challenges that presents. There are things about Wooten that are pretty unique. That's probably why most of you or half of you are live in this community because of the school that your kids attend. So we want this to be a very informative evening. Again, this is just what we think is pretty much the beginning of this little roller coaster ride that we're going to begin. Linda Hitchcock is going to talk in a moment about what the things that will happen in addition to your students yesterday got their academic planning cards, so they're already beginning to talk about courses for senior year. And one of those opportunities that we wanted to make you aware of this evening, because there are always lots of questions about it, and your students will be hearing about it, and again, it is a tremendous option for them for next year is the College Institute program, which involves students enrolled at Wooten for part of their day going up the road to University of Shady Grove for courses through Montgomery College. So let me introduce our relatively new College Institute coordinator, Amy Evans.
Thank you, Dr. Bass. Hello, everyone. Welcome, parents and juniors. My name is Amy Evans. I'm the College Institute coordinator here at Wooten High School. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to speak to you briefly about what College Institute is, and if students are interested, how can you get into the College Institute program? So some of you are probably wondering, what is College Institute? Many of you may have actually heard me talk about it. I came into English classes yesterday to talk to the juniors about the College Institute. So hopefully, if you're in here, you have heard me talk about it. But so what is College Institute? College Institute is a partnership between Montgomery College and MCPS, which allows high-achieving seniors to take a college course their senior year. Students will take this course during the school day here at Wooten. If they don't take it here at the high school, we offer 2 different locations for the College Institute class. The first location is at USG, which is Universities of Shady Grove. That's about 2 miles from here. And it's a Montgomery College course. The USG hosts different institutions at that location. The other location we offer our classes at is at Gaithersburg High School. So students have an option of going to USG or Gaithersburg High School based on what classes they would want to take. It's a wonderful, phenomenal program. And so what are the benefits of College Institute? If a student takes College Institute, by the time they graduate at the end of their senior year, they've already had the experience of knowing what it's like to take a college course. So they've already known what it's like to have a college professor, they know what the college workload is like, they know what it's like to go to a different location for a college course. And right now we have about 100 seniors participating in this program, all of them successful, all of them very bright students, and I'm hoping that for next school year, hopefully we have juniors here who are going to be interested in the program and who are going to want to sign up. So if it's something you're interested in, then I'm hoping you will come to the elective fair. It's going to be this Thursday here at the high school during lunch, during all the lunches and the comments. I'll have a table set up and I'll be giving out more information. I'm also going to be sending out through email, and at the elective fair I'm going to be giving you dates as to when I'm going to hold another information session. So if you are interested in this program, you'll be able to get more detailed information, such as what classes are being offered exactly and when the classes are and where you're going to go. So the reason I'm telling you about this tonight is because juniors just got their planning cards yesterday for the following school year. So you guys are now thinking about what classes you want to take and what you want to do. So right now is the time to, if you want to take a college course your senior year, that's going to have to go onto your planning card. So please consider this program. It's a fantastic program. We started it in 2002, so we just hit our 10-year mark. So if you have any questions about it, my information is on the Wooten website under staff directory. You can find me on there. Again, my name is Amy Evans, and I'm the College Institute coordinator here. So please consider the College Institute program. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. That's our public service announcement. Okay, without further ado, let me bring up Linda Hitchcock, the Career Center, CCIC, whatever. And she will introduce not only the moderator, but the college admissions panelists, and welcome to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bass. Boy, do we have a full house. Thank you all for coming. I'm glad you all got the emails and the phone calls and all that good stuff. I'm real excited about tonight because this is something that we do every year, but this year I decided to do a little bit of a different twist. And also I made sure that the kids realized that this was for them too. So I felt like it was very important for people to know what we were doing with your students, and also that this is the beginning step. So hopefully you all picked up the agenda and the handout. And the handout is just kind of like the beginning step. How do you choose schools? How do you look at them? You know, just trying to get a start, okay? And it's important to do that because this is a process. It is not a quick thing that you do and you apply and it's all over. It is a step process and takes many steps. The counselors, we have counselors with us tonight, but our counselors are wonderful. You guys have absolutely no idea how lucky you are. I've worked in other high schools, and I cannot tell you how fortunate you are. All of them are very experienced. They want to help your student. They make appointments. This is, you know, our services are free for you. Take advantage of them. Our counselors, myself, we know what we're talking about. We know our Wooten kids. We know what happens in the field. We talk to college reps like this all the time. We're here to help you. So our counselors were in with your juniors in the first week of December and went over Naviance, and I don't know if Jay did this already. Did you do this? Did you tell them? So they were in with your juniors. Your juniors should have gotten a packet about testing and should have gotten a packet about Naviance. If you did not get that as a parent, please go home and ask your son or your daughter, where is it, okay? And if you didn't get it and they don't know where it is, it's on the website. But it's very informative and it helps talk about the testing. As far as Naviance training, again, as I said, this is the first step of the night. The second step, we'll learn how to use Naviance, and that will be later in April, okay? On your agenda, there are dates to remember, and again, these are all steps for you guys to know. The Naviance is a phenomenal program that we will utilize a lot, and you will have to know it. The kids will absolutely use it. It's important. But the one thing that most important is to know how to start the process. And our motto in the Career Center, and thanks to Dr. Bass, is college is not a prize to be won, but a match to be made. And how do you make that match? Well, a match is lots of things. A match is not just grades and test scores. I'm wearing a sticker that says, I am more than a test score. And you are. Okay, test scores is just a tiny little portion of this. And that handout that you've gotten, you will see where test scores fall on the rank of what colleges look for. But one thing they do start to look for more and more and more is demonstrated interest. And that's why tonight is so important. You need to understand what different kinds of schools are out there. I ask students when I sit down with them, do you know a difference between a liberal arts college and a university? And they're like, no. And I'm like, you need to know. There's a huge difference, okay? One of the colleges is a small liberal arts school. Check on the book, Colleges That Change Lives. It's one of 40 that's listed as a college that changed lives. You've got a big state university, University of Delaware, out of state, okay, which is going to look at applications very differently. And that's a big university. You've got a great regional university, which is in Miami. Again, nice, regional, well-ranked in their region. Smaller size, not so big, okay? Then you've got Drexel, which is a co-op school. How many of you even know what a co-op school is? Okay, a lot of you don't, so tonight you're gonna hear, okay? Then we've got a huge school, Big 12, West Virginia, and they don't even want essays or recommendation letters. So this is, again, something very different, okay? So all these schools have something wonderful to offer. All of you are different. I have a phrase, if we all liked vanilla, it would be a very boring world. So everyone is very different. Every college is different. You need to go visit them. You need to look at them. You need to walk on the campus. Demonstrated interest is huge, okay? So that is the big part of why we're here tonight. Another thing that I've learned over the years is a student's got to be happy where they attend. When they're happy, when they go to the college and they've been there and they've gone and walked and sat in and talked to the professors, when they're happy where they go, they stay there. They don't transfer, they stay there. They have a wonderful experience at that college. They get involved in the internships. They get involved in leadership opportunities. They may join a fraternity or a sorority. They may do, you know, things that they've never done before in high school, they may do in college because they love it so much. It's such a different experience. Many of you may not have been to college in the United States, and it's very different when you start applying to schools in the United States. They're going to look at things other than just a test score and other than just a GPA. They're going to look at, again, I keep saying this over and over because it's important, but demonstrated interest. But they're gonna look at the internships. They're gonna look at your classes. It's not a matter of taking 8 AP classes in your junior year or your sophomore year. It's not a matter of taking every AP that Wooten offers, which is 27 of them. It would almost be impossible, right guys, to take every AP class in this school. It would be utterly impossible. That's not what they're looking at. They're looking at, what have you done? Do you like science? Well, then you should be taking the hard science classes and you should be doing something outside of school that's interesting in science. Do you love kids? You should be working with kids. Maybe you should be in our internship program with child development. It's one of the best in the county. So therefore, if you want to be a teacher, you should be doing that, because that is a great reflection showing that college who you are and what you want to do in the future, okay? It's not a matter of paying for expensive programs at different colleges. Every college has different programs, but they're looking at the student, okay? They're not looking at scores all the time. They're not looking at AP classes. They're looking at you as a person. Essays, all these other things come very, very important. And that's what you need to understand with this process. And that's why tonight is so important. And that's why tonight I wanted to have the different schools represented. Becky Sapano, I don't know if any of you had the opportunity, and I don't know, did you talk to about that? Okay. Anyway, she is here. She's going to be our moderator. We're real excited. In that handout, I also put out a publication list. There's some really good books that you guys should look at. Winning the College Admission Game is an excellent one. Remember that in the Career Center, we have all these resources for you. I'm going to shut up and let this get started, because I'm real excited to have Becky here moderating, and I'm real excited that the colleges are here, and I thank you very, very, very much for driving. Some of these people have driven 2-3 hours and going to drive home 2 and 3 hours, so thank you so much for coming. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand it to Becky, and you can start asking your questions, okay? Yep. Do you want to be at the podium?
I'll sit with them. Hi, I'm Becky Supiano. As you heard, I'm with the Chronicle of Higher Education, and I'm glad to be with you all tonight. I'd like to just begin by having all these college representatives just introduce themselves. If you could just say your name, the college you're from, and maybe a sentence about that college, that would be great.
Oh my, I didn't come prepared with a sentence. Hi, everybody. My name's Casey Kessner. I'm an admissions counselor for West Virginia University. For those of you that don't know, we're located in Morgantown, West Virginia, about 3 hours away from here. It's an easy, quick trip. One thing, I guess in a sentence, we're a large public institution, flagship university for the state of West Virginia.
Hi, good evening, everyone. How are you all? Good, you're still with us. Awesome. My name is Heidi Mulhern, and I'm an admissions counselor at University of Delaware. As our name kind of gives us away, we are also the flagship, but for the state of Delaware. We have about 17,000 undergrads, about 3,600 graduate students, and we're very well known for discovery learning opportunities for students. First university to offer study abroad for United States students. So study abroad, research, doing internships, and of course, research and service projects as well. So thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Krista Nordman. I'm from the Office of Admission at Miami University. Despite our name, I know it's confusing. We are not in the state of Florida. We are located in Oxford, Ohio, which is in the Miami Valley of Ohio. We are a public university in Ohio. We enroll about 15,000 undergraduate students. I think we are most known certainly for our strong academics, particularly in the School of Business and the creative arts, as well as research. We are also ranked #1 in the country for study abroad. We're very excited about that. About 50% of our students study abroad. And we're also just ranked #3 in the nation for undergraduate teaching, right behind Princeton and Dartmouth. So we are looking for a lot of great students, and we receive many from Wooten every year.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Heidi Riegel, and I'm the Director of Admissions at McDaniel College. We're about an hour north of here, 1,700 students, and we are a diverse student-centered community committed to excellence in the liberal arts and sciences.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin Nissen, and I work in the Office of Admissions for Drexel University, which is in the heart of Philadelphia, so about 2.5 hours from here. We have about 12,000 full-time undergraduate students, and my colleague Chris will tell you more about co-op.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Chris Bertoni, also from Drexel University, down from Philadelphia today. And as Caitlin mentioned, we're a cooperative education university at Drexel, often short-term co-op. For those of you that didn't raise your hands, that you know what that means, a little context, cooperative education is really kind of the idea that college isn't just time for you guys to continue your classroom learning and the academic theory, but really essential to developing those skill sets and understanding that material. You also need to start using this as a time to get real-world experience. That can come through in a lot of different ways, but the most structured one that we have at Drexel is that pretty much every student that graduates, as a degree requirement, has to go out and work for at least 6 months somewhere full-time in their field. So during that time, you're not taking other classes, you're not required to be on campus, but what you're working with the Career Center and your advisors on is ultimately finding an opportunity to start putting to use those skills you've developed in the classroom throughout your first years at Drexel. And maybe we'll get to talk more about that as the night goes on.
Thank you. So as we've just established, there are lots of different kinds of colleges. There are many, many colleges out there. How would you all recommend that students figure out what kind of college environment is best for them?
I'll go first this time. If I were to make a recommendation, there's a lot out there. So I think a good starting resource are those resources that are directly at your fingertips. Coming down to your college center, maybe browsing through some of the catalogs, the services they have, the College Board, and other sources have surveys that you can fill out to start to narrow down interests. You can explore some of our websites and start to get a list. The other thing I'd recommend doing, especially for those of you that are, I know many of you here are in your junior year, use this time to go out and maybe visit some local schools. It doesn't have to be a big trip that takes a whole weekend or a long time, but just go out and start to get a sense of what does an example of a college campus look like. And then from there, you can really start to figure out what did resonate with you, what did you like, what didn't you like, and start to refine your search some that way before you go booking a trip out to Chicago or across the country or anywhere else.
Okay, thanks. So I'd like to talk a little bit about college visits. And as Chris was just mentioning, you can visit colleges to get a feel of different colleges that are out there. But once you're visiting colleges specifically because you think you might want to apply, could you talk a little bit about why it's important and how students should go about conducting a visit? I've heard of more families kind of doing stealth visits where they don't tell the admissions office because they don't want to get sort of the whole walking backwards song and dance about how many books are in the library. But other colleges think it's really important to go on an admissions tour. Could you just give a little information about what a family should plan when they do go visit a college?
I'll jump in here because we really encourage students to visit Miami. No, you're not going to be able to pack your bathing suit and lounge on a beach again. We're in Ohio. But we love when students come to visit, and we encourage students, and I would encourage any student wherever you're visiting to make the most of your visit. It is great if you can go sit in on an information session to get the nuts and bolts of applying to that particular school and certainly to take the tour. But a lot of colleges also offer students the opportunity to meet with faculty members, to sit in on a class, to have lunch in the dining hall. Some even offer students the chance to spend the night with a student host and really get a sense for what would life really be at this university. So I think it's very helpful when you're thinking about narrowing down that list of schools that you're going to be visiting. Go to their website, find out what do they offer for a visit so that you can maximize. If you're going to travel all the way to Oxford, how can I make the most of my visit and really explore what I'm most interested in and get a feel for what my life would be like here as a student.
As for the stealth visits, while it may be great in theory, you may be surprised because you may choose to surprise visit your dream college, and guess what? everybody's on spring break because you forgot to look at the calendar. And there's not a student to give you a tour, and then you're stuck with the old admissions counselor walking you around. So it is really good to plan a day so you can get the most out of your visit. And the other bit of advice that I would give to you is, if you do not want to meet with a professor and you do not have questions, do not have mom or dad schedule a meeting with a professor. You know, you want to make the best use of your time. And if it's important for you to eat in the dining hall and it has nothing to do with tasting the food, it has everything to do with sitting there and visualizing yourself with this group, this community, and do you see yourself fitting in? So those would be my bits of advice for you.
Yeah, at Drexel University, we make it very easy for you to come and visit us. So we have open house events all the time, and this is true across the board. If you go online, you can schedule a visit. We have a 30-minute information session and then a campus tour. And really what that does for you is it gives you a sense of what your day-to-day life will be for possibly the next 4 years. So in Philly, for sure, some people love the urban environment. And when they come, they're really energized by it and they love it. And other people, more pastoral maybe, might hate it. And that's something that's really important for you to figure out, is maybe Drexel has exactly the academic programs you like, but you really hated Philadelphia. Or the other way around. Maybe you didn't expect to like an urban environment and you really like it. So that's really what the campus visit is going to do for you to better understand what it is that you're looking for.
And going on Heidi's comment about the stealth comment or the stealth visit, it's also really important as we're looking at demonstrated interest that I know at University of Delaware we do keep record that you visited. And so when we're reading your application, we see, oh wow, you know, they came for a formal visit program or any type of visit program that you do. So some colleges and universities are definitely keeping that in consideration. And if you come for an informal visit, maybe you know a relative or you know, your parents are alum and you already go to campus all the time, definitely noting that on an application. That way the college doesn't just assume that you've never visited. So that's one comment I would make. And also as a veteran that went through the college search process with my older sister, do we have any younger siblings in the audience? You went through a college search process with an older sibling? Okay, a couple of you. I know something that got a little confusing for me as I was going through the search process is after each college visit, I had a notebook where I just wrote down pros and cons, something that I really liked about the visit, because I had the embarrassing find that in my freshman year in college, I was like, I can't wait to go to the gym. That wonderful indoor track is awesome. And a friend of mine's like, that's not here. And so I'm like, oh, just kidding. I clearly don't go to the gym all the time. So try to take notes after each of your visits. That way, you know, that initial fresh perspective of your visit, that's something that's really helpful as you then have the ball in your court spring of your senior year when it's your time to pick and choose, you know, what you liked most and what stood out most to you during your visit.
I would just offer one last tip of advice to make this a more fun experience. I think it was in your article you described the college search as opaque and stressful. If you guys read the article, and it is in a lot of ways. So with the college visits, not just thinking about what does the admissions calendar look like, but if you know that you're interested in a school where you can go watch athletics or a school that has a theater department, take a look at our schedule there as well. Take a look at what's going on at the school or in the surrounding neighborhood. Don't just come and spend the day doing the tour, but stick around and see what our choral ensemble sounds like or see our basketball team in action. We play Delaware at least twice a year. We win a lot too, so come on.
Not women's basketball.
No, that's true.
All right. Break it up, guys. Okay. I'd like to move on and talk a little bit about applying early, which I know is something probably some students are considering. What advice would you give students about figuring out whether they should apply early decision, early action? I know different colleges have different possibilities for students to consider. And if you could please touch on whether it gives students an edge in admissions and whether it's still something they should think about if they plan to need financial aid.
Well, I'm going to jump right in and say at WVU we have like a rolling admissions process, which means that we don't have a strict deadline. You can apply, applications open up in September, and you can continue to apply until the fall semester in August. So with that in mind, some students may like to just wait to the last minute to apply, which isn't going to be a problem. You can still get enrolled. However, one of the things that I always like to say, and I mean, it's a good fact of life, just, you know, sooner the better. One thing being that this puts you, once you get into the cycle, get an acceptance letter, then you can begin the other process in the admissions kind of timeline, which is like securing your housing deposit. Now that's a big thing, I think, when it comes for incoming freshmen. They want to make sure that they get the housing with the air conditioning, or, you know, and they are able to room with their best friend and things like that. So the sooner that you can get your application in, it matters for things like that. Also, scholarship consideration. For us, our scholarship deadline is February 1st. So we'll still continue to accept applications well after the February 1st scholarship deadline. But if you want to be considered for that extra help, you know, you've got to have that stuff in early. So if you can just get it all out of the way early, why not? It kind of just eliminates that extra stress factor. Just do it.
I just would jump back real quick. I agree with everything that you said, but I just want to make sure everyone's clear on what the different options are, because I think there's two parts to this. There's the different types of review and choosing which type of review that a school offers that you want to go for. I think it's a fact of life with a rolling program like West Virginia, or with any school, it is always in your best interest for you to do your part first and get everything turned in early, so that if there are any questions or anything we can update later on, we're all able, and somebody yell at me if I'm speaking for your school incorrectly, but we're all able to go back in and make notes on your file, add things if anything changes throughout the year. But if you get that into us early, there is no chance of you missing any deadline when you have that, and you know that. And if you're on our list of applicants, we're going to be in touch with you. We're going to keep you updated on how things are going. So going back to the different types, early decision, and again, correct me if it's different at your school, but if a school offers early decision, that's typically that binding form of admissions. So that's really making that commitment and saying, not just this school is my first choice, but really saying, I've researched this school, I know a lot about this school, and I know academically, socially, financially, this school is a realistic fit for me, and this is somewhere I want to be. With that, most schools usually do get those early decisions applications reviewed first and get those decisions out first. Other schools will also offer something called early action. Early action is just a little bit more of a scaled admissions review. So it's not necessarily that there's a binding commitment there, but it's saying that you're going to get everything in early, so we'll try and get you a decision earlier than everyone else. And then regular decision or rolling is just kind of that standard admissions review that I think most of us think of. So I just like to make sure, and is that the same terminology you guys use down the line? Cool. So at Drexel, just real quick, we're early decision or regular decision. Those are the two options. So for our students, if you do know and you've done your research on Drexel during your junior year and through the summer going into the fall that you think Drexel would be a really good fit, we do have that opportunity. I would just stress that it's not just saying Drexel's my first choice, I'd love to be here. It's knowing, because you're making that commitment. You're saying to us in an early decision application, you're signing a contract saying, if I'm accepted here, I will see you in the fall. I will be ready for classes. I will have my pencil sharpened. I'm good to go. So it's a commitment on your end, and in return, the university makes that decision earlier and helps to review.
Just to follow up on that as well, and to the second part of Becky's question, Miami also offers early decision. We also offer early action, and then we also have a regular decision deadline as well. For students who know that financial aid is going to be a significant part of their decision in terms of where they may be attending college, we don't recommend early decision, because we actually don't provide a financial aid package to students until mid-March. Meanwhile, our students admitted under early decision, that binding agreement must submit their enrollment deposit by January 15th. So while students will learn of their merit scholarship decisions, they won't have any idea of their financial aid, their need-based financial aid, until mid-March, and they've already committed to come. So that can be a big factor, I know, for a lot of families as well too. So if you know that's going to be a factor for you, you may want to look more towards early action. To the other part of Becky's question, do we look more favorably upon students who apply early decision, or do we admit more? Miami does tend to admit at a slightly higher rate for students who are applying early decision. It's only about 1% higher rate of admission for students in that pool. And this year we had over 1,000 early decision applicants. I wouldn't say, though, that that's a big advantage. That's a big enough advantage that you should apply early decision. You should really only apply early decision to that school that you know is your top choice.
And at University of Delaware, we do not offer rolling admission or early decision or early action. We are a regular decision option for our non-residents. But we do actually stress our one single deadline of December 1st. However, because of Hurricane Sandy, we did extend our deadline to January 15th this year, but as you're considering applying for next year, we just set December 1st, which historically has been a priority deadline. So that's another type of deadline that you might see at some schools that's called priority. So historically, that's been the date that has been for also our honors program applications, as well as for best merit scholarship consideration. But to keep things easy, December 1st is the only deadline that University of Delaware is sticking with for next year. So the benefit is definitely stressing again that earlier application, just to make sure that it's out of your hair, and also again showing demonstrated interest that you're applying earlier. You're trying to put that best foot forward by submitting that application earlier rather than later.
And I also think you can use the early deadlines to your advantage, not only to get the paperwork out of the way, because we always tell you to do all this crazy stuff academically, and you heard 27 AP courses, and I'm sure many of you are trying to achieve that and have that on your transcript and do an internship somewhere. But we want you to have fun with your friends, and it's really stressful your senior year. So besides just getting the paperwork out of the way, use it to your advantage as you do the search process. So what I'm trying to say is, if you know earlier of your admission to a school, then maybe your parents will plunk down the money to fly to the West Coast to visit the school in California that you would love to go to once they know that you've been admitted. We see that all the time at McDaniel. For my West Coast kids who would like to come to the East Coast, they're not visiting us until after they've been admitted. It's a better use of their time. So just something to think about as you do the search process, that early might be better for you because it allows you then to plan your spring and look at the colleges as an admitted student because you tend to be a little bit more critical.
Okay, we were talking about this a little bit before the panel started, but if we could move on to talk about how students should interact with admissions staff at colleges they're interested in. How do you like to hear from students? What's the appropriate way for them to reach out to you? What questions are important enough that it's worth bothering you when you're all traveling to different parts of the country? Do you like hearing from parents? And do students need to be perhaps more formal when they write to you than if they were talking to their friends?
I love hearing from you guys. Absolutely. If you have a question, you're always welcome to email, and I'm guessing that everyone here would echo that as well too. Certainly always feel free to reach out to the admissions office, and in most cases, you'll actually have a dedicated staff person at the admissions office who works with students from Maryland or who works for students who are applying to the architecture program. Schools will do it differently, but there's usually one person that you can always reach out to, and they can be your one contact at the office. So absolutely feel free to contact us. I do prefer to hear from the student. I know students are very busy. They're often in class or doing sports after school, so it's tough to reach us when we're in the office, but whenever possible, it's great to hear from the student. Although parents, of course, I know you have questions too, and you're welcome to reach out to us, but we love to hear from the students too so that we can have that conversation. A lot of admissions staff do have dedicated Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts for their professional use as well too, and that's typically displayed on the admission website. I will say it's a little awkward when a student wants to be my friend on Facebook, and that's not my work account, so I'm not going to be your friend, I'm sorry, but a lot of schools will definitely advertise more casual ways to be in contact with the admission staff, and often have a lot of social media outlets for you to be in contact with them too.
I would say too that if anything's changed from when you submitted your application, those are exactly the types of things that we want to know. Your soccer team, you're the captain, and you won states. Like, we want to know, those fun updates or something that you really want to share with the admissions committee. I would say maybe not a weekly update, but certainly maybe I had one student that touched base with me once at the beginning of the fall semester and then wished me a happy holiday, and that was great. And so still giving me an update, but don't feel pressured that you have to do that. So really, if something's changed or you really want to express interest, that's a great way. And I know we're really lucky in our office that we have a communication center where we have so many different types of staff members that can ask or answer general questions that you have. So you can always call our office, but there's always a counselor that's also on duty. So in the event that I'm not in the office and you're like, Heidi's my rep, I really want to talk to her, there's always a counselor that's on duty as well. So a lot of colleges and universities also can have that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that everyone already said, but one thing that you might not think about is when you have a question about your application. Maybe you sent your application, but you're waiting on hearing if your transcripts were sent, whatever. Make sure you put your full name and possibly your birth date in the email, because a lot of times we get an email that says, what's my application update? And it's from some person that we have no information on you except your email address, which might have changed already. So just make sure that you do provide that personal information so that we can look up your application and help you out on a more personal level. Just it's something you might not think about when you're sending off an email from your iPhone or whatever, but just make sure you give us that information and background information for us as well.
Just say one last thing, and that's think about all the resources that you guys have too when you're directing your questions. You guys are in a situation where you have the choice between picking up the phone, waiting for a visit, sending an email, going on Facebook. So just make sure that you're asking the right question to the right people. And we know all of the staff at our university, so if we're not the right person, we can help redirect it. But for example, Twitter probably isn't the best place to post your GPA and SATs and ask us how you're looking. That might be a conversation better handled personally over the phone or by email. Similarly, if you're asking about how a particular program is or what types of classes there are, I know we talked about speaking to a faculty member before. I know at our school we also list alumni information. We have some alumni who answer questions off of our admissions website to help. They're the ones that are in the classroom. They're the ones that have sat there. Sometimes they're better than we are at answering some of those questions. So knowing what resources a school offers and thinking about those opportunities can be a great way to help get the information you need too.
And I just have to share with you this wonderful anecdote. I had 1,200 decision letters that needed to go out for early action by December 21st. It is the holiday season. I hadn't done any of my shopping yet, and I had a parent email me. They were just wondering what our student body number was. That's something that you can find on the internet. So, just as it is much stressful for you getting through the process, and I'm here to help you, and we will welcome questions at any time, there are plenty of resources that you can find that, very, very quickly, or ask, or embed that in, another great question that you're going to ask in the same email. So please think about the timing of the questions and what you're really asking, if it can be just, because you know what I did? I copied and pasted the web page and sent it right back to the person, and they worked in IT for the Department of Defense.
Well, one thing that I would like to encourage students out there, if you want to give us a call, do so. Mom and Dad, if you want to give us a call, maybe just encourage your student to call instead. It's all right. We will welcome any questions. I think it's safe to say we will welcome any phone calls. But I do get a lot of parents sometimes that'll say, well, my son or my daughter, I'm not sure they're going to ask the right questions. Well, that's not really setting them up to, start to spread their wings and fly, so to speak. So, they can contact us that way. For me, phones work, email. If you don't get a hold of me on the phone, instead of saying, hey, can you call me back at this number, it might actually be easier if you just said, hey, can you send me a quick email? Here's my email address. That's something. Another thing that I kind of wanted to touch base on was somebody was saying, you want to call and check on if we received your test scores or your transcript. If you just went onto the College Board and sent out your SAT scores to us like an hour ago and you're calling to see if we got it, I can assure you we did not get it yet. And sometimes, the mail takes a few days to get here too. So patience is a virtue. If you sent something out, maybe call us if you want to, double check. Give it a week. Give the mail person time to deliver it and also to get it processed in our system. Just would, you know, we hate to get on the phone and say, well, just try us back again, because then, you know, not only is that kind of doubling the workload for you, but it's, you know, a little trickier for us. So if you can just hang out, it helps a little bit. Anybody else want to comment on that? I don't know.
Yeah, no, Delaware, I would say, experiences the same thing, definitely the processing time, but my only other quick comment is think about a nice, generic john.smith@gmail.com email instead of slapmybaby69@gmail.com. You might have created it in 7th grade, and that's okay, but think about who you're sending that email to. So john.smith@gmail.com sounds lovely. So.
Yeah, I had a student not too long ago say, "Sup, what's going on? Check out my stats."
Thanks with an X.
Thanks. It's like, well, we would like to encourage a little more professionalism. That'd be cool.
Okay, could a few of you at least, excuse me, talk a little bit about what you actually look at when you evaluate a student's application?
I'll jump right in there because I've been doing this for a couple of months now, and I have about a month more to go. This is application review season for all of us right now. Miami completes a holistic review, meaning we are looking at all of the information that you submit to us along with your application. We don't make any decisions based just on numbers, just on your GPA or your test scores. We actually start first and foremost with a curriculum review, and we do a very thorough curriculum review. So we're looking at your transcript from Wooten, and I love Montgomery County. They have such easy to read transcripts, thank goodness. And we look at the types of classes you've taken, and I know you're gonna hear this again and again, but it's not necessary that you take all the APs that are available to you, but we do love to see that students have challenged themselves. And I should back up and say that we do this curriculum review within the context of your high school. And that's to say that there are schools out there that offer 27 AP classes, there are schools out there that offer 0, and they still may be 2 very competitive, academically challenging high schools. So we like to do that review contextually, and we do receive with every application a school profile. So we have a whole lot of information about Wooten, how many students are here, how many of these classes are offered, who can we contact for more information, so we have all that. So we complete that curriculum review, we do look at test scores, we do look at your GPA, but we also take into context the comments of your guidance counselor, who will also submit a recommendation on the school report, any subsequent recommendations from teachers. And yes, we do read your essay. Miami's getting about 22,000 applications this year, and we read every single essay. So we love to hear your voice too, and all of that is really important in the application review process for us.
I'm probably going to be a little different here. I think I was the only one. We were talking a little bit earlier about this. WVU, we don't require essays. We don't require letters of recommendation. And I get a lot of students or parents that will say, well, can I just squeeze this one in just in case? Can't you make sure that it gets to the right person? All I can really say is that we will put it into your student's file to be considered in the event that we need additional documents. And what I mean by this is, let's say your student gets on our wait list. Basically, our wait list kind of goes out to a committee. At that time, later down in the admissions process, down in the timeline, when we are kind of reviewing those students that are on the wait list, that's when those additional documents will be considered. And it's not really considered by a lot of the admissions counselor staff. This is through, you know, maybe our director of admissions will take a look at this. And so this is something that we want to know a little background into what's happening. So let's say you tested really well on the SAT, but that GPA of yours fell maybe your sophomore or your junior year because you had personal issues. A lot of times we won't be able to read that by your GPA, although we do understand that there is some correlation. You know, we'll see a high GPA and say, wow, this student's very bright. What happened here? We know something might be an issue. Maybe they had to take a few extra jobs. So that's, in those circumstances, that is good to supply additional documentation. and we will gladly accept it. But for the most part, the first thing that we're going to look at is your GPA and the test scores, your official ACT or your SAT test scores to get you through that initial process. Only if you're on the cusp will we continue to look at other materials. I don't know if that's, I think I'm the only one that our school does that. What is the cost for that SAT score? The cost, the price? Oh, it varies. It's kind of, you know, if you have a high GPA, then your test scores can be a little lower, you know, and vice versa. So it kind of just varies case to case.
I would just add, looking at a school like Drexel, where we're 13,000 undergraduate students, we do fall, I'd say, somewhere in the middle of what you've heard as the answers. We do look for essays and letter of recommendations with many of our programs. We do look first to your academic accomplishments and the work you've done in the classroom. Absolutely, the whole point of this admissions review is we're trying to figure out how well are you going to be able to perform academically here at Drexel. We're not trying to say, okay, which student's better than the other. We're just trying to say, are you a student that's going to do well here? And once we've been able to answer that question, then depending on the program and where we're at in the review and seating and seats, that's when we start to think about, okay, well, who's really the best fit for Drexel? How do some of these students compare? And that's where some of those supplemental things, that other information can really come into play. The other point I think is worth making is when we talk about those kind of personal situations and some of those opportunities. The essay can be a good place to discuss that, but I think the essay is such a great place for you to talk about what motivates you as a student and some of those more positive aspects of yourself. And I think it speaks volumes if you can get someone else, whether that's a teacher or a counselor or an advisor, to speak on your behalf about maybe something that was a challenging situation. It doesn't read as much like you're maybe trying to make excuses for yourself or you're using that essay to explain things, but you've got someone who cares about you, who's worked with you, who's willing to vouch for you and say, no, this student's a good student. This is just an obstacle that they've had to overcome or work around. And so when you're choosing what gets included and where does that come from, I think that's really something worth keeping in mind.
I think something else about University of Delaware that we also go through a holistic review process, and I think a lot of students and counselors are like, do you really read all those essays and all of those recommendation letters? And I'm like, yes, we do. So it's definitely, I think, my favorite part of my job and the most challenging part of the job is you know, going through all those applications and deciding. But along with, you know, definitely your course rigor, really looking at the program that you're applying to as well. Some colleges and universities might have very different sets of criteria that they're looking for, but always thinking in terms of, I'm interested in being a chemical engineer, that you should really be challenging yourself, you know, through that senior year in your core STEM classes in science and technology. So Calc, if you can make it to, you know, AP Calc BC, if you're thinking about engineering, that's awesome. But also still keeping up in your humanities work. So don't forget about foreign language, don't forget about English, and vice versa. If you are going to be an English major, are you challenging yourself in the field of English and the humanities and the social sciences? But don't forget about that honors physics class, you know, in your senior year. So, you know, take a really close look at what colleges and universities require and what they recommend for your course selection. So that's really important. A lot of colleges put that right on their website of recommendations, especially through senior year.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Actually, Drexel does review applications by major, whereas a lot of other places do it by territory or region. So you really are getting a counselor who knows that program and knows what kind of student is going to succeed in that program. So make sure that you do have those prerequisites, but also, you know, showing some sort of interest in that, whether it's a club or something like that, you know, that can speak volumes to how you're going to pursue that major once you get to Drexel. Doesn't necessarily mean that if you're a fashion design major that you had to have ever made a garment before, but, you know, just something to think about, and it's probably something that you're already doing just innately. But then also with, you know, the same thing, with your major specifically, the essay is a good place to talk about why you're interested in that major. So at Drexel, we are looking at an essay that, for most of our majors, you can talk about pretty much anything. But we do encourage students to talk about why they're pursuing the major that they're pursuing, why they're interested in that field and why they want to pursue that at Drexel. So what Drexel's academics might be, really what the student is seeking when they're looking at their academic pursuits in the future, maybe their career goals or aspirations.
So the essay keeps coming up, and I'm sorry, but for those of you who do evaluate essays, could you tell us a little bit more about what you're looking for? Is it mostly about what the student says and what you can learn about the student? Do you care how well the essay is written? And how much help could a student get from parents or teachers or other people before you would think that was not okay?
I think content is important, only because we want to learn more about you. And I think that students will tell me time and time again that the essay is the hardest part of the application process because they're always trying to second guess what we would like to hear. And I'm very proud to say that this year's, the applicants that went through this year so far did not write about the presidential election. 4 years ago, that was every other essay that I read, and they were regurgitating Fox News. So it's really important to write something that comes from the heart and you answer the question. There's nothing more frustrating when I get a CD that has all of the great artwork that you've done and or a poem, and you're submitting that as your essay. That's not the essay. Every other applicant, to that college has written an essay, so don't cheat the system. That's a negative for you. But answer the question or the prompt and speak from your heart. That's really important. And yes, grammar is very important in your essay because it allows us to determine your foundation, your writing foundation, because our English professors want to polish you as a writer and as a critical thinker, but we don't want to have to start from the beginning with you. And as far as how much help, sometimes it's hard to tell how much help you have received. Yes, you need somebody to proof it, because I know I can write something and I can read it 3 times and I don't see the typo because I know what I've written, but I'm not seeing the typo. I think we all agree to this, but it's important to have somebody else read it. I had a student that I worked with the other year who took advantage of McDaniel being in his backyard, and he was denied to his first choice, Princeton. And he was a friend of the family, and he said, "Miss Heidi, can you tell me what happened?" And I have friends who work there, and it was his essay. Do you know what was wrong with his essay? He had a misspelled word. It would be to his utter delight to attend Princeton University. Utter, U-D-D-E-R, okay? So even spell check doesn't pick it up. So, you gotta think about, would you be proud of this product if you turned it into your toughest English teacher? And from the help perspective, I think we nail the kids if we've met them in person and they do not speak as eloquently as they write, and there's a disconnect there, or if there's a disconnect between the English grades and this really great essay. So a well-written essay, that's what I'm trying to say. It's really hard to tell how much help a student has received, in my eyes.
The essay is actually my favorite part of the application. And I think a lot of students stress about it, but what I'd love to tell you is writing the essay should be the easiest thing you do because it should be your voice. You don't need to stress out about trying to impress us or trying to regale a dramatic story. You really just need to be yourself and let your voice shine through. Some of my favorite essays this year, one girl wrote about her hair. Someone else wrote about a baseball game. Someone else wrote about the color blue. Those are the 3 best essays that I've read this year, and you wouldn't think that topics so simple could be such great essays, but it was the way they wrote it, it was the passion with which they wrote about it. I've laughed, I've actually cried reading some essays this year because they were from the heart. And I think that's what a good essay, to me anyway, really is. It's not you trying to be something that you think we want. Go ahead and be yourself. If you're applying to the right schools, the schools that are a great fit for you, your admissions counselor will probably recognize that. So there's no need to stress about your essay. Although I will say, and this is a theme of the night, doing your essay, writing your essay early really helps. If you're trying to pound out that essay the night before the application's due, I guarantee you it's not going to be a thoughtful, well-written essay. It is really helpful to have the time to have a teacher or a parent read the essay for those errors. And finally, especially if you're applying on the Common Application, please, please be sure that you don't use any names of universities in your essay. I read a great essay this year talking about how much they wanted to come to our school, and at the very end they said, "I can't wait to be at Duke next fall." And that's tough, because I really thought they wanted to be at Miami. So just make sure that if you're sending a school an essay, make sure that that school's name is in the essay.
Definitely along with what Krista was saying about the essay, it's definitely fun to learn about your voice. And if you're stumped thinking about the college essay, I know I was kind of scratching my head being like, I have no idea, freaking out about, what are they looking for, trying to crack the code. And ultimately I chose a topic about what do I want to share about myself that can't be reflected anywhere else on, say, a transcript. It might not come across on a recommendation letter. So I wrote about a cheating incident that I witnessed, just to talk about my commitment to academic honesty. So I didn't shout from the rooftops, I am academically honest. I decided to show rather than just tell in an essay. So your English teachers are probably telling you that, more about showing and not telling in an essay. Certainly, of course, spell check. The worst typo I ever saw was the difference between heroin and heroin. Female version of hero versus illegal substance. And it was the closing line of her essay. I was so upset to leave my heroin behind. And I was like, good, because that's illegal. So it's good that it stayed in Belize on your service trip. So who knows? So be really careful of that. Make sure, I know that I have read a 2-page essay. I have skimmed a 5-page essay. So really be mindful, try to stay to that 500-word limit or any type of word limit that's set. Just with the large amount of applications that many universities receive, it's very helpful to try to be concise, but don't worry, I won't stop mid-sentence at 500 words. We'll read that rest of that essay.
Okay, so I'm getting over a little cold here. Changing gears, I would be interested in hearing what you all have to say about evaluating colleges and how much money they're going to cost a particular family. Obviously, people look for all different kinds of things for college, and how much it'll cost is part of that for a lot of families. When in the process should people start thinking about that? And how on earth are they supposed to figure out there's a price you all list on your webpage, and maybe that's not exactly what everyone is paying? How do they know what it might cost them?
I'm happy to answer this question. This past year was our first year being fully early decision, regular decision, and offering that early decision, which is that binding commitment. And so this is a topic that we've, as an admissions office, really explored a lot and kind of asked about how we talk about it. And I think when you approach the financial setting, it's the tuition cost isn't the number to base your search off of. I don't think you want to lop off schools and just say anything over X dollar amount, don't even look at it. Because that's not necessarily indicative, as you were implying, of what the end price might be for you. So there are some helpful tools and resources out there. And I will tell you, when it comes to financial aid, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is that it's something you want to start thinking about from day one, but you have to understand that it starts general and gets more specific as your search goes on. Because as we get more information about you and where you are academically, if a school offers merit scholarships, where we get more information from the CSS profile or the FAFSA form, depending on what financial aid form a school uses, it helps us to start to narrow down and really drill down to your personal situation. There's a lot of forms of funding for an education and kind of ways that it can come together. And so with the different ones, there can be resources out there. I'm pretty sure, again, I'll do the correct me if I'm wrong thing, but I think everyone here on our admissions websites, we have some form of a net price calculator. So that's a great starting point to punch in. Net price calculator is one way to start to get a little bit more specific. You can go from that tuition cost, you can enter in some preliminary information about yourself, maybe some GPA or test scores, maybe some family income, some background information, in-state, out-of-state if it's a public institution, and that can start to help us give you a sample package, an example that maybe puts you in the ballpark of what you could realistically expect to be your cost when you come through. The other thing I'll tell you, the way that we talk about it a lot at Drexel is that there's really 3 big parts to paying for college. There's the family, you guys yourselves, and the money that you've saved up as a student or a family unit. There's the university and any type of institutional aid that they can offer. And then there's the state and federal governments and what they're able to offer. And the goal shouldn't be to end up with any one a group paying for all of it, because that's a very rare and often unrealistic situation. But the goal should be to find a balance and a school where all three can kind of come to the table and contribute and help make it a realistic option. So that's kind of my 2 cents on how this works and where to start going through. University financial aid websites, I'd also just mention, and I know we list them on ours, and I'm sure you'll find them other places, the College Board, finaid.com, I'm blanking on a few others, but there's some great outside scholarship opportunities as well, from corporations, from local community groups and Rotary clubs, that can also help to build this up. So starting and looking at those can be a great way to start to kind of build that puzzle and bring everything together.
I think the other thing that you all have to do as a family is sit down, and it's really hard to have a discussion about finances, but talk about where's that responsibility going to fall when you have the remaining dollar amounts, you know, what your final bill will be, who is going to be paying for it. My father had a philosophy that he would help, but his name was not going to be on that diploma, so I would be helping pay that tuition bill. And I'll tell you what, yeah, think really hard before you decide to skip a class in college. He had it figured out like to the minute how much it would cost if I missed a class. I kid you not. So, and obviously that has changed a lot in the past 20 years. So you really have to have that talk. And if you know that finances are going to be a part of the decision, do not cross the college off the list because of the starting price. We call it the sticker price. But you also have to have a variety of colleges with a wide range of sticker prices. Because, and sometimes what you'll find is the school that costs the most may give you more aid and grants, and actually, in the end, be the least expensive option. And in my heart, I really hope that the student has the ability, with the support of the parents, to choose the school that best fits them. And hopefully that means it's also within the financial means of the family as well.
Have any of you heard about the academic common market? Is that a familiar term out there? Well, one thing that you might want to check out, there are some schools, like for instance, WVU, we're out of state, but we can also offer in-state tuition rates for out-of-state students, depending on what majors they're in. So this is something that you might want to check out. Some schools have different reciprocity agreements, so to speak. And also, you know, of course, the price your first year is going to be a little different than, you know, your remaining 3 years or so. You know, you've got the housing to consider, but also, you know, your second year, other opportunities open up. Once you get into your specific program, there might be specialized scholarships there. You might take a different opportunity, like become a resident assistant in the dorms, which might waive, you know, the cost of living for a year and include your different meal plans for free. So there are a lot of other flexible options that you would qualify for in your second year. So something else to consider.
And I'll hop in really quickly. Also thinking about merit scholarships and just understanding from each college and university, how do you grant scholarships? You know, is there a certain GPA or SAT? I know at Delaware it's definitely still a holistic process, but as you're thinking about not only different priced institutions, thinking about different types of competitive institutions that you're applying to, you know, creating that list of a safety school all the way up to your stretch institution. And so maybe looking closely at the freshman year profiles, getting a ballpark idea of where you're falling kind of on that scale, and that if you are a more academically competitive applicant, you know, just looking at that profile, there may be opportunities available to you with merit scholarships. So just ask those questions at each institution about, you know, what should you expect concerning the scholarship review? Is there an additional application you need to submit? At Delaware, it's automatic, just based on your common application that you submit. So just asking those questions early on. And there are some full ride scholarships out there. I know Delaware does offer some, and so just getting that good perspective on what to expect.
That is actually a really good jumping off point for my next question, which is how students can get a sense for how competitive of an applicant they would be at different colleges, especially at colleges that look at things besides just grades and test scores. I know a lot of times people will hear like, so-and-so got into this college last year and I have a better GPA, or I'm a better student, or whatever. I mean, how can a student get a realistic sense of, do I have a hope of getting into this place? Are they pretty likely to take me? So that they can come up with that list of places that are a reach, places that are more of a safety, and places in between.
One way is just doing internet searches, quite honestly, because all universities, for the most part, do report their average SAT, GPA bands. So you can kind of get a ballpark figure. Most of us publish them anyway, just so you can see if that's a safety school for you, a reach school. Asking other people who did apply a couple years ago, but also keep in mind that some schools do get more competitive each year. So like Drexel, for instance, last year our numbers might have been a little bit lower than they are this year. So that's something to consider as well. Also recognize that different majors might be more or less competitive. So if your friend got into a college and had lower SAT scores than you did, and you're applying to a different major, that might be the difference too. So because most of us do have a holistic review process, it is going to be something that might vary from one student to another, and not to compare yourself too much against each other, and more about just strengthening your own application to whatever school you're applying to.
I say if you can afford to, when in doubt, just go ahead and apply. Kind of touching on the spot where you were saying different programs might have different acceptance policies or criteria. I just learned recently that our nursing program at WVU, it's really competitive, and we kind of have always boasted that and said, it's really tough to get into. And I think maybe we were pressing that a little too hard, because there were like, I think 130, 180 spots open each year for this. And this year we got 13 applicants in it. And it went from, like hundreds down to, we're pretty sure we're not gonna get in. And it's like, no, guys, don't panic. You can go, just don't freak out. A lot of times you're probably well better off than you expected to be. So don't psych yourself out.
And I also would like to tell you that a lot of us, we do work with our students. For instance, at McDaniel, it's all regional because we don't have a college of engineering. But what I do is, and I know I look like I'm 25, but I've been recruiting in Montgomery County for 15 years now, believe it or not. And I know these counselors here. I know the wonderful folks in the career centers here. And when they are working with students and wondering, oh gosh, should I put McDaniel on this student's list? More often than not, they will call me and run stuff by me. And if there is a backstory on why the grades dipped sophomore year, then I say, yes, go ahead, put McDaniel on the list, or you know what, it might be a reach, and the student needs to know that if you add us to the list. So I've even had counselors who will email me on the side and say, Bobby just applied last night, I found out, and I did not add your school to his list, so don't, it's not me. And that's fine too, but please know that we as admissions staff members do have relationships with the counselors and the good folks who work in the career centers here. Okay.
First of all, before we go any further, and we're not done yet, but this is a logistical intervention, could I, not only are these folks, they look like they could be my sons and daughters, but they're really not. They are unbelievably knowledgeable and tremendously casual, so they've obviously done this, and very articulate. So first of all, I'd like to thank them on behalf of all of you for being here this evening. So here's what we would like to do. If you don't have to glance at your agenda, but if you certainly may. We have purposely left about 20 to 25 minutes on the end of this panel discussion, because the questions that will now come from you are particularly, having done this now, this is the 6th year for me, are typically not only pretty poignant because they are geared towards Wooten, and they are pretty Wooten specific, about, and I won't go into them, but I could probably ask them, but I'll let you do that. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We are going to adjourn promptly at 8:45. That's what the agenda indicates. If you cannot stay until 8:45, I would ask that you either please leave now, or please, if you would, pick yourselves up and move to somewhere towards the back or the side, because what typically happens in gatherings like this is in the middle of people talking, people just kind of get up, it becomes like a union station. And it's really sort of rude. So if you cannot stay until 8:45, I'm going to take a moment of pause, and I'm going to ask you to please depart now, and thank you for coming. And now, while people are departing, if there are those of you who do have a question and would like to ask, if I could ask you just, if you would, to come up and sit over here in the front row. I'm going to hand you the microphone, and you may ask your question, if you like, to any one of the panelists or all of them. Anybody staying would like to ask a question? Okay, let me just wait 1 second until people have left. Let's actually sit right here. There you go. All right, everybody pretty much resettled. We just, we sort of gained 3 minutes because we allowed an extra couple for transition. So here we are. You guys are wonderfully compliant. All right, panelists, you ready? Here we go.
I wanted to know, what should a student do to prepare for an interview with one of the admission counselors?
That's a great question. At Delaware, we do offer optional interviews. So I think the first piece of advice I'd have is just understanding for the colleges that your son is applying to, how important the interview is. Is it really #1 priority, or is it 100% optional? At Delaware, we recommend that students bring a resume as well as a high school transcript, or at least the senior year schedule, just to kind of start the conversation. Typically, a lot of our interviews are with a fellow student, a student admission officer. We have a really competitive application process. A great way that I got into college admissions was through a similar program. So that's also a good question to ask. Will this be with a current student or an alum or a member of the admissions office? So those are some good questions that I would say to be ready to ask initially when setting up the appointment. And then also just making sure you don't over practice questions. So don't stand in front of the mirror with that tie on being like, I know exactly what you're gonna ask me next. So just really trying to be natural is always what I recommend. Be prepared to talk about your student experience, but don't have rehearsed speeches ready.
You know, and then there's the typical things like sit up when you're sitting on my couch and I'm interviewing you. Don't lay back like you're watching Sports Center. And we provide, you know, we have a wonderful coffee machine in our lobby, and we also have chocolate chip cookies. They're there for you while you're waiting for me to come down and get you. It's okay if you bring it up to your interview, but I really prefer that you not eat your cookie while I'm expecting you to answer some questions from me. And also, the coffee's fine. Usually 9 times out of 10, we don't have an issue with that, although I did have one person spill it on me one time. They were so nervous. But I think, you know, you should know why you selected the courses that you did in high school. Why did you choose that path? I know that you have different institutes here. Why did you choose to enroll in that institute? What did you get out of it? What was your internship like? Are you going to, you know, think about those things if we were to ask you those questions. And then probably for those of us who do interviews, we will turn the table and say, what would you like to ask us? Or was there a question that you thought I was going to ask you that I didn't. And boy, we can learn a lot about you from the question you thought you were ready for us to ask. So just be prepared in that sense. And most importantly, be honest. Have a realistic view of who you are academically. That's why the transcript is so important, because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to talk about your academic progression in high school and you think you're an AB student, but you're not quite sure, and you have a really great SAT score, might be a 1200, can't really recall. And you know what, in the end, when you apply to the institution, we get the real scoop from your transcript and the College Board. So just know who you are before you prepare for the interview. And the other thing is, be willing to talk. That's, I can't tell you how many times I have taken a student upstairs to my office, we were done like that, and I bring them back downstairs, and the parents are like, wow, that was quick. Didn't really have much to say. So be sure that you're willing to be interviewed. That's really important as well.
I'll open by just saying that at Drexel, we don't offer admissions interviews, so this isn't directly part of our review process. But one thing we do at Drexel is with the co-op program, our students all go out on job interview after job interview after job interview while they're with us. And one thing that we stress to them at the college level that I would stress at the high school level for an interview as well is in that process of thinking about what you're doing, and the subject of institutes is what triggered it for me too. Because you might start out down an institute path in high school and realize that that's not what you want to do. If you start down a science and technology and realize by the end of it, you know what, I really like writing and I missed my English classes being so focused in the math and the science, that is a good thing. And go into it knowing that. Know how, as a student, to talk about what you gained from the experience and explain kind of what you learned from it. I think a lot of students that I talk to get so nervous and panicky because they think, well, I haven't taken a single fashion class, or I haven't taken a single engineering or business class. How are they ever going to take me? And that's why you're applying to that program, is because you know now that's an interest of yours. But tell us why you know that. What else did you try? What experiences did you see? And so thinking through some of those questions and situations and how do I frame this is a really good prep piece to any interview, whether it's a college, a job, anything like that.
How do you view, like Wooten has a college institute, they offer internships versus an AP class senior year. We're trying to figure out classes for next year and the advantages of an internship or a college class, or just stay here and keep the course. How do you view that when you're looking at applications?
That's a great question. If you can't tell me grabbing the microphone, I have a very strong opinion of this, and we were actually talking about it in the Career Center earlier. I think the Institute programs are an amazing opportunity and certainly a great chance for students to start to understand more about what they're interested in professionally. I would caution students, though, not to focus on those institutes to the detriment of their academic courses. Students applying to Miami for our Farmer School of Business, which is our most competitive program, they think in high school they need to take marketing classes, they need to take business classes, and they're shocked when I say, no, you need to take math. Because our Farmer School of Business can teach you marketing, they can teach you finance, they can teach you accountancy. They want to know that you have the fundamentals down cold, so you should be taking math. If you want to be an engineering student at Miami, it's wonderful if you've had the chance to, be a part of the science and technology program and to take engineering courses, but be sure you're also taking math and taking physics and being really strong in those fundamentals. And across the board for us, I would always say, if you have the opportunity to do an internship versus taking an additional class or taking a more challenging class, we would always recommend taking the more challenging class or taking the additional class, which I know is a surprise for a lot of people, but that's what we're looking for.
And to hop on that, I would say definitely thinking about doing a summer internship, something that doesn't interfere as much with the regular school day with like an early dismissal. I think that's a great and enriching opportunity and a great way to spend your summer break. Having that shadow experience. I see a lot on applications that there's been a shadow experience. I think especially for certain majors, I would say that with our nursing students and our future teachers, having some shadowing experiences or expressing interest in caring for others or working with children, that's just definitely an added quality to an application that we want to make sure that that's going to be a good fit for you. So seeing that on an application, I think, is really beneficial. But still, staying on top of all of those core academics, for sure.
Krista referenced the conversation that we had a little bit before the panel began, so I'm going to ask you a question that came up then, which is oft answered in many circles around Rockville. Talk a little bit, as you did earlier, about senior year foreign language, taking that extra math that's not required for graduation. Krista, you've touched on it a little bit,
Yeah, I'm going to echo back to, I think, a message that we've given earlier tonight, and it's we are happy to talk to you about what we as individual schools require, what we recommend, and what you're going to find out is we're going to disagree. Sometimes we're going to tell you different things, and this foreign language question is a great one, because coming from Drexel, what I'm going to tell you is, as far as foreign languages go, unless your major at Drexel is going to be international studies or international business, I'm not losing sleep over what foreign language class you took. That's just our approach and our policy. As we go down the line, you're going to hear very different answers to that question. So this is part of that defining your search by maybe schools that look at education the same way you do. This is your chance to decide what's important to you. If a particular college you already know is a school that's your dream school and everything else about it is right, then maybe that's how you want to go about making these decisions. If you haven't picked a particular college yet, then maybe what you've decided is what's going to help shape what is going to be shaped by what classes you've already chosen. I think the best decisions you can make at the high school level are two things. You want to make sure you're challenging yourself. So if I see a student who's at a school like this with 27 AP classes, and the highest thing on their transcript is an honors class, they can be a straight A student, but something tells me that they weren't making the most of the opportunities in front of them. So thinking about that and balancing it, and maybe you take a class and maybe you did get a B in one class, but you're still a straight A student. You tested the waters, you tried it out, you pushed some different things. If you went into an institute and chose to do an internship, again, it goes back to that question of, did you learn something from it? Did it expose to you that you have an interest in environmental science in a particular field, and that's now what you're applying for, or nursing, I think is a great example, in the health professions, showing that you've done some patient care and you've thought it through, that can be really helpful. If you don't really know what you're interested in and so you stuck to those curriculum and classes, you can't go wrong with tried and true. If you're taking some AP, some honors classes and you're going through, I think that creates a strong jumping off point. So that's kind of my opinion, but I do want to give the others a chance to kind of voice how their schools might view things differently.
Well, I also just wanted to add too, and we gave the example of foreign language, for example, it's wonderful if you have the chance to take 4 years of a foreign language in high school, but I think the basic point is it's important to go beyond the minimum. It doesn't necessarily mean stressing out about taking so many AP classes, but there's a minimum high school graduation requirement, 2 years of a foreign language, 3 years of a social science, and it's great if you can go beyond the minimum. Yeah, you might have room in your schedule to only take 4 classes in your senior year, but it's really important, at least for us, to see that students are still challenging themselves and still have that thirst to learn in their senior year as well too. So if it's not in the foreign languages, maybe it's in math or maybe it's in English, and taking those above and beyond classes, beyond the minimum of what's required.
Something that I always recommend to students, and I actually have to thank my mother for always sending this message to me in high school, that I was an undeclared student when I went off to college, and so I was kind of stumped, should I focus on the sciences? Should I focus on, English and the foreign languages? And what she would always tell me, and I always tell my students that I counsel, is try your hardest through your senior year. Try for those challenges. Don't just stick with the minimums. That way it leaves the most options available to you, whether you are going for the most competitive institution out there to maybe something that's more local to you, or a 2-year school option, for instance. There's many great options out there. But working your hardest through senior year and taking on that challenge early will just leave you with more options in the spring of your senior year.
Okay, and this is my 3rd go around. 3 different children, 3 different needs, and I've learned something new now too. And it's been 6 years since the last one. But this question might be a little different than what you might expect from a Wooten parent. listening to NPR today, coincidentally, there was a program that I heard part of. And it had an interesting concept. It talked about our current culture of kids in sporting events, no winners, no this or that, that you got to get straight A's and you don't learn how to fail, so to speak. And by fail, I mean is some kids think if, and some parents think if their children don't get an A, that's a failure. And that there's value intrinsically in getting a B or getting a C or trying your best, and that still isn't an A. And how that is affecting the graduates that we're having come out of college even into the workforce. And I'd appreciate your views as you're looking at that on a college transcript, because here we are, we're talking about it, and it's talking about taking those APs, getting those A's. But is there an intrinsic value in not always getting straight A's? And would you look at a transcript and see the value in that in an individual?
Wow, that is a really insightful question and observation. I actually just read a letter of recommendation yesterday from a math teacher, and they started off with, I have no idea why Johnny asked me to write this letter. He is not an A student in my class. He is not a math student. I sure hope, basically what they were saying is, I sure hope he decides not to be a math major in college. But what I can tell you about him is the work ethic behind this kid. You know, he wasn't a great test taker when it came to math, but my goodness, if I were to have looked at, and the recommendation said, if I were to lay out all the homework in front of you, he can do the work. It's the test scores that were driving down his grade. And he talked about what he got out of it. And, you know, even the kid wrote in his essay about, you know, pretty much the same thing, the culture, and, you know, I work with Montgomery County, so we know where this all came from. And, you know, and it was the culture and where they live and how it's just implanted from the time that they are born and raised here, the whole 9 yards, and what it meant to get, a C in pre-calc, you know? And it was fine. He's not going to be, now, if he wanted to be a, you know, a biology major or go on to pre-med, different story. But he wrote about what it meant maybe not to be the best. And I also read a great essay about a girl who lived right around the corner from here, and she, you know, basically talked about how she was looked down on in her court because she didn't play soccer every Saturday morning, because, you know, by kicking that round ball, you know, that gets you places. And her friends were in the library, and she wrote about, like, just being different and not being the A student, but striving. So there still are kids out there who get that, and there are college admissions officers that get that too. And I think that the message should be, as long as they can look themselves in the mirror and know that they gave 110% within the curriculum that they chose, and they know who they are realistically, then that's fine. The ones that we have the issues with are the ones that have the B's and the C's, and they only have the Ivy Leagues on their list, you know? And there are great schools out there. There are over 3,000 of us. And your kid's gonna get in somewhere because there's more than one perfect school. And over 75% of the institutions in this country admit 60% or more of their applicants. So there's hope, okay? So I think that that's the most important thing, but gosh, that is a great point that you raised.
And I think to kind of add to that, students that are making the straight A's, while they may excel, have really strong, I guess, strong strengths in the classroom. I was speaking with the head of our, I mentioned this earlier, the head of our nursing department today, who said, you know, we try and get a diverse group of students because in certain fields, they want those straight A students that can really kind of crack down and just, you know, process things very linearly. But then there are other fields like the medical fields, which, you know, it's very human oriented, and students need to have the time to get out and do other things and not focus so much. It's not necessary that you have to be, you know, you don't have to be a perfect straight A student to really get the most out of college. We were saying how a lot of the straight A students that come into the nursing program, turn out to not be perfect nurses because the students that have maybe, well, I'll say our cutoff is a 3.0. So our 3.0 students that go into the nursing program really excel at things like the interview, the personal interview, and those things kind of skyrocket because they've put a little more time into, I don't know, I guess the social skills. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is my mom always told me to have a variety of things. So if you get an A on your transcript and a B and maybe a C, it's not the end of the world. They're not going to fail. Just make sure that you play up their other strengths as well.
Yeah, and I think it really just boils down to finding the school that fits the personality of the student. So if you are a student who always strives for that A, who is really competitive with your classmates, there is a school that's going to perpetuate that culture. And if that's really what you want to go for, there are schools where you will fit in right with the rest of the students. If you're a student who values other things, those schools exist too. So like at Drexel, we always talk about practical education, hands-on learning, going into co-op and real-world experience. That's going to be a very different kind of student than might apply to other schools. So we are looking for a student who fits our personality just as much as you're looking for a school who's fitting your own personality too.
I want to just, before we go on, and we're about 5 minutes from adjournment, but I just want to offer a very, very, from a Wooten perspective, a very frank word of caution. I dealt with as a parent for my 3 kids, one of whom is at the University of Delaware now. And that is that in this process, we're all most of us are very high achievers. We all aspire for both ourselves and our kids to have lofty goals and to be very successful. Try not to let your ego get caught up in where your son or daughter goes to college. It is wonderful to be able to say, somewhere around the turn of the calendar next January, after most of your kids have gotten in somewhere, my kid got into fill in the blank, and fill in the blank, and fill in the blank. And that's wonderful. It may not, and that's why it's on the agenda, it's not a cliche. The college is not a prize to be won, but that's how we sort of regard it. It's like who can get the best prize, even though it's not the best fit. And I say that, again, sort of bluntly, but because of this community and what we not that we shouldn't aspire our kids to very lofty goals, but some of us drive our kids to the point where we are asking sometimes unrealistic expectations, and the end result is, I kind of laugh when I read these statistics, that somewhere between less than 50% of kids graduate within 5 years from the college that they started in. So the motility rate is so great among kids who are transferring that all of this time that we spend and energy that we put into where are they going to go, which is the best college, et cetera, more than half of them don't wind up finishing anyway. And I don't know what the retention rates are at your schools. I'm sure they are 80, 90, 100%. But nationwide, those are the statistics. So again, I caution you, we all want our kids to go to Harvard, MIT, Princeton, I don't know where it is, whatever that means to you. But just be really, really careful that it's not for you and your family tradition as much as what fits the kid and where, in fact, they should be going that matches for them. I think we had, I'm sorry,
Can
go
I
ahead.
just talk to that real quickly?
Sure.
You know how I said earlier about you should sit down and have that really frank discussion about the financial responsibility and whose shoulders that's going to fall on? Well, you also need to sit down and have the discussion about the list, because there's always a list of schools where the parents think their children should apply, and then there's that list where your student really wants to apply. And you need to talk about why you see your child at the schools on your list and why they see themselves on the school on their list. And it's really, really important because I'm very casual. I'm very honest with the kids that I meet. And I had a kid in my office 2 years ago, came upstairs, and his parents are alums of the college. And I said, oh my gosh, it's so great. You could be here. Let's talk about your academics. And he goes, Miss Heidi, I got to tell you something. If I get into Penn State, that's where I'm going because I'm tired of small. And that's fine. And you know what? We talked football for a little bit. Parents were none the wiser. And they finally had a conversation, and he never applied. So you really need to talk about what your hopes are for your children to your children. That's really important. And then let them talk to you about where they might see themselves or where they envision going to college as well.
Okay, mine's more housekeeping. You talked about tours and coming in. How far in advance do you have to do those? I also have an athlete. Does she have to contact the athletic department as well as you? How does all of that work out?
It might be different, I'm assuming, for each school. At WVU, we've got, 30,000 some students. So we've just renovated our visitor center. It's brand new. They've poured a bunch of money into it, so that way we can have a large, auditorium style setting. So basically, if you want to come on a certain day of the week, you name it, we can probably fit you into that. As far as getting departmental visitations, those ones might be the things to kind of plan ahead on, because a lot of times those professors, the deans and things like that, are probably tied up weeks and months in advance for certain days. So if you have a weekend, a day of the week in mind, that's the thing to check on. But as far as visitations go, I don't know if it's the same with you guys. You can pretty much get in pretty quickly.
Yeah, at Drexel we have a daily visit presentation, so pretty much every day of the week, including Saturdays, we have at least one presentation, sometimes two. So you can just go on our website, register. We recommend about 2 weeks in advance, just in case there's a popular holiday weekend that Friday might fill up a little bit faster. But you just register yourself online and show up, and you get the presentation and a campus tour. If you want to do a departmental add-on, sometimes we have pre-scheduled ones that you can register for. Other times you can just contact the department, again, with some advance notice, as well as the athletic department. They'd be happy to talk to you. They're very well versed in our campus tour, so they know exactly when it ends, and they'll meet you in the visit center and talk to you after that. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. Also, the open house events, which I'm sure everyone hosts on their campus, are a really good way to get everything all at once. It is a little bit overwhelming because you are getting everything all at once, but you can talk to the departments, you can talk to the dean of the college that you might be applying for, the athletic representatives, the student body, everyone is going to be there all at the same time. So that's a good way to kind of get the whole picture all at once.
And then speaking on kind of the big holiday visit option, that if you have no school because it's a big holiday or spring break, just be mindful that you might have a larger tour that day. So what type of visit experience are you looking for? Would you like to try to have a small tour, or are you open to the possibility of being with lots of other visiting families at that high popular time? For instance, I think the last week in March, first week in April is probably when we have thousands of visitors that decide to come, and so we love our tour guides during those 2 weeks. So if you come for a smaller visit day during the week, then it might be easier then to also coordinate with athletics to get in contact with them.
Well, you've had a good time when the hour and a half goes so quickly. I cannot thank enough Chris and Caitlin from Drexel, Heidi from McDaniel, Krista from Miami of Ohio in Oxford, Heidi from the University of Delaware, Casey from West Virginia University, and maybe most importantly, but not necessarily, Becky for taking me off the hook for having to moderate. Couple of just a quick reminders, as it were. First of all, this evening has been taped and will be on the Wooten website, just so you'll probably want to watch it again and again and again. But at least let people know if in conversation it comes up that it is available in case they weren't able to be here. Second of all, this again, as I said at the outset, is just the beginning of the process as we're just getting into academic planning. 8 weeks from now, beginning first, second week in March, up through just about spring break, counselors will meet individually with each junior and have this discussion, at least initially, about what are your future plans, and begin to sort of gathering that preliminary information so that when spring break occurs, those college visits can begin, and then after spring break, we will meet with them again to begin to pare down going into latter part of junior year, it's probably the long list at that point, but at least the starting point. The magic number ultimately for colleges that we recommend here at Wooten is somewhere between 8 and 10. Anything more than that, you haven't done your homework well enough, and we probably need to talk, or you need to get together with Mrs. Hitchcock in the Career Center, myself, counselor, somebody call one of these lovely folks in the admissions office, have a chat with them. Keep in mind also in April, we rely extremely heavily in Montgomery County, and particularly here at Wooten, on the Naviance program. All of your juniors they should be receiving messages regularly. They have logins. You should be invited by your son or daughter as the parent to have your own login. It's an unbelievable wealth of information and scattergrams and their own personal statistics, GPA, test scores, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we will use between now and this time next year when a lot of this is over, except for the shouting. So it should be a very fun-filled year. Again, let me thank the panel for being here. Very sincerely, it was wonderful. They will be at the Verizon Center January 17th. John Paul, no, you guys should get together and go on the road. And let me again thank all of you for being here, for taking the time, for going the distance. It is 8:45, and we will adjourn. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you.